So I'm going to have Deepak now go through a couple of really cool demonstrations that really highlight our cloud and virtualization tool sets. Since we just kind of hammered you guys a bit on PowerPoint, because it's hard to demo an appliance in front of a large core group of technical folks, we decided we're going to kill the PowerPoint for now. We'll go straight into demonstration, whiteboard any questions that we have. We'll basically probably do that for the remainder of the time. So whether we're talking applications or whether we're talking this, we'll be doing some whiteboarding and demonstration. In the cloud virtualization solutions, there's really three main things I want you guys to think about that we try to do. Number one is help customers move and protect that data. So whether it's to any number of the clouds we spoke about with hyperscale, and there's about 40 different object storages that we support outside of your Googles and your Oracles and your Microsofts and your Amazons. So we give that portability with deduplication, et cetera. We try to make sure also that we link in intelligently with the hypervisors. So believe it or not, we support 11 different hypervisors from Azure, SAC.
There are 11 different hypervisors?
There are.
Right.
Yeah, believe it or not. If you also count some of the cloud hypervisors, there are. And what we try to do is provide the same level of parity of how our technologies, from snapshot controls to granular object to full VM to disaster recovery, even the live recovery components work across them. Now, of course, we don't offer all of that across every single hypervisor yet. That's part of the work in progress as some of their APIs improve, et cetera. But that's sort of our whole design philosophy is let's build a structure that as technologies come available, we can make it flexible to provide that same level of access. Beyond then moving it, it's about managing that data. How can I manage, make sure that I can replicate, transform from one hypervisor image to the next? And then ultimately beyond that, then how can I actually use the data? Drive dev and test operations, provision information, things like we talked about even with hyperscale and going from S3 right into an EBS. Well, that's part of provisioning and what you would do with virtual machines, and those are all parts of what our solutions offer. So I'm going to let Deepak step you through not only our new interface. So if you haven't seen our new interface, this has been out for about a year and a couple months now. This is the new HTML5 interface that instantly kicks up when you launch the hyperscale appliance or reference architecture. It's what comes up now with all the different solutions that our customers buy. And it's really about how you can do about 95 to 98% of the Commvault activities. And we continue to innovate and modify within this. But I'll let Deepak go into it and take it from there.
So as you mentioned, the familiar Java GUI still stays. Believe it or not, I've come across a bunch of customers that say, I know where every button is, don't change anything for me.
There's no accounting for taste.
But this is as Don said, take the more common functions, the repeatable functions, and bring them into an easier interface. So it's dashboard-centric, and it's really focused on your point of view. So being virtualization and cloud, when you log in, you see the kind of the global dashboard, but then you can drill down in here and go into a specific dashboard. I only have 3 enabled. Jonathan will show you another one that's focused specifically on databases. So a virtualization dashboard immediately gets me into my hypervisors that I want to protect. So any of those 11 hypervisors. And the other important aspect that Don mentioned is we're treating AWS, Azure, soon Oracle, and Google as hypervisor environments, which means our VSA serverless agents can sit in there, interface with the APIs, and do what we would normally do on-prem with the equivalent in cloud. So again, the context here is hypervisor-centric. Quickly, how many hypervisors I have, what I have protected out there, how my jobs are progressing, what storage I'm utilizing, how my backups are going, how many unprotected VMs I have, et cetera, and I'll bump into that. So one of the first demos that I like to show, and I kind of call this the most interesting demo in the world, because a number of customers ask this, and believe it or not, existing Commvault customers will say, oh, I didn't know that you guys could write to cloud, and I don't need a whole bunch of appliances. It's the 45-second demo of how quickly it takes you to go to cloud. So much as I already have AWS and Azure connected here in the local tape library, so or local disk library, just as I would connect to disk or tape, we have added the cloud interface, and you drop down and select any one of the platforms that you want to connect to from a cloud perspective, what the server is on-prem that holds this. So this could be, again, a hyperscale node. All of the endpoint URLs are auto-populated. So with platforms such as Azure Stack, we're going to modify that so users can type in their own private server host names.
Hang on, Deepak, one question. When you do this in if that was a hyperscale farm, it was a cluster.
Doesn't matter.
And that would be one name for the cluster.
Correct.
And then every media agent inside there that you don't see which is hidden back, all gets this information.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. So I can
I
call
didn't
it.
see a generic S3, but
Yes.
There, it's
you
there.
didn't pull the list down for very long.
It's there.
so-
Yep.
Okay.
Swift is there, I think.
That's not the full list, but that is enough of a list in this demo environment. As you activate more will come on there. But that will cover generic S3 as well. So I put it in my credentials. I already pre-copied the key because I didn't want you guys stealing my key. Getting your free
See that?
Azure account.
It's okay, it was just broadcast to everybody out on Tech Field Day.
Someone's going to
Oh,
do it,
no,
and I'll make sure I kill my bucket after this. And you create.
But you didn't set up
And
a
you're
whole
connected.
nother Azure account for this?
I did.
Don't
but
you know
I got
us?
a bunch of Azure accounts. And that's about as long as it takes to connect to storage. So the most interesting demo in the world, I call it, is every Commvault customer can immediately put in their credentials and start writing to any one of these cloud platforms, and including the tiers within the cloud platforms. So that's the first component, is I don't have to choose, I don't have to do anything very specific from a hardware standpoint in order to write to that platform. The other notable thing that we've really changed is this notion of having plans. So the idea, for traditional Commvault customers, you think about policy, you think about storage policy, you think about schedule, and all of these have to come together sub-client. From a plan perspective, it's a reusable plan that gets created. So I'm going to create a virtualization plan, and it'll ask you whether you want to do just backups or you want to do backup and replication. If I wanted to do backup, and we'll get to the backup and replication, and let's call this the bronze backup one, I can select a library that happens to be a cloud library as well. I choose the retention that I want to retain, that I want to maintain for the data, the SLA, and it's automatically pre-populated with the obvious schedules, which is do daily incrementals for me, do synthetic weekly fulls, and if there's any auxiliary copies I choose, perform those automatically. I can add a schedule if I want to. For example, if I want to be able to do a synthetic monthly full and I want to have a specific time and day that kicks off, and we all know how schedules work, so I won't go through that. Click Next, it'll ask for additional copies. So the dash copy functionality that again, you may be familiar with, where we take a backup, and then after the backup job's complete, make sure you make a copy off-site to an alternate location. I can choose to create another copy for that. In this case, I'm going to finish that plan. So now this plan is created. It's my bronze plan, and this plan can be reused for any number of clients or sub-clients in the environment. So in this case, let's see, I'm writing to the AWS pool, 24 hours. Let that finish. So here's my bronze pool. Then I come back to my dashboards, and I can see my specific virtualization dashboard, which, by the way, if I'm a VM person, I can just set that to be my home screen. It'll always bring me into virtualization dashboard. I can see specifically what hypervisors I'm protecting, and here I have 3 setups. So I specifically had my team set up a production vCenter for me, a DR vCenter, and AWS. In this case, when we're treating AWS as a hypervisor, we've got a VSA sitting there, and we're performing operations such as snap orchestration and backup to whatever targets may exist. So it's auto-scanning instances that may be already living there. So in my production vCenter, I dig in another layer deeper. It will start telling me what's protected. I have 4 VMs in here protected. I have 13 that are not protected out of the total 17 that are in there. And these are my sub-clients. I have a gold and a silver already set up. So let me click on gold. See what was set up in there. So they've got VM 6 and 7 that were set up, and that's when the last backup job was done. And it's tied in with a specific protection and replication plan in this case. So again, I'll go back to just create one. So we just created a target, and that was directly to cloud. So I'll just say that's my bronze subclient. I'll search for my VMs. This is always the tricky thing with live demos, as it's scanning vCenter. But down here, I select the plan that I want to associate with. Here we go. I can choose by host, by VMs, by data store, and tags. I think tags is pretty phenomenal because these are the tags in vCenter that are being pulled up. So I've got customers that'll say, we've got 3 tiers. This is the production only. We'll tag it production to Commvault. I want you to pick up production. I want you to automatically assign it to a plan, and then we'll pick any new VM that gets tagged with that tag. Or there's the OS only tag, or there could be a one-time backup tag. In this case, my environment's small enough that I don't really need to do all tagging. I can choose one VM or a bunch of VMs. I'll choose VM1. Here's my bronze plan that I created. I add a subclient in there.
So the point there is you can make sure no new VMs ever go unprotected, or you can ensure that you protect exactly what you want to have when you want to have it based upon your needs as a customer. We've given all of those options. If new VMs get lit up, they're automatically detected, automatically assigned to a plan and protected based upon those tags or even the VM, data store, affinity, you name it, right?
It was associated the bronze plan here with VM1, and I'm going to hit the backup now button. Obviously, the first one, regardless of what I choose, is going to be a full, and I'll enable granular recovery. And this will actually start a backup job, and I can go monitor the job and let it complete. But essentially, what I've done here is I've taken VM1 that's sitting on-prem in a vCenter environment, and I've created a target that was an Azure pool, and I'm now writing directly over the network, over our lab's network, and backing up straight to a container in Azure, or it could be a S3 target.
So that's how simple it is to back up to the cloud, or back up on premise, or discover and kind of apply this in mass, right?
So while this is running, I want to talk about the replication component, which I think is frankly another key area for us to look at. So back to my plans here.
And probably more in line to what Howard wanted to see as well, as far as what we can do for high-speed recovery.
Plans, create a plan, virtualization plan, backup and replication plan. So the idea here, and I'll just create a test one, is we're going to make a first copy. And a lot of the things that we've been hearing from customers has been great operational recovery is fine for backups, and yeah, you can make additional copies, but the name of the game is get me the copies for different use cases, i.e. DR. Embed DR with backup. If I'm already making a copy, help me make a secondary copy. Why do I have to buy 2 products or do it at a hardware level? Do it in software, especially when it comes to cloud, because you can't do, in a lot of cases, hardware replication in that case, it doesn't end up working. So again, I can choose my local copy. Let's just assume it's a local copy. I'm making it every 4 hours with whatever schedule, and I say, do you want an additional copy? Again, this is a target backup copy. I'll say, no, move me to the next step. From a backup replication perspective, so this answers your question when you're talking about VM recoveries, types of different VM recoveries. It's part of our VM target set. So here I only have one additional data center, which was the VM data center. I can choose a specific schedule, or it's going to complete when the job completes. I can choose additional options such as booting the virtual machine, making sure that it runs, validating it, or even change the disk provisioning type on the secondary. I like the validation just to make sure that I don't get a blue screen surprise when time comes to perform DR, and save that. So this is one of the 4 capabilities that we offer in what I call the live suite of products. And this is where I'm going to answer your question now. This is all part of the live sync capability. So live sync, think of it as a next step up from Dash, which is basically put a backup copy. So what live sync now in this plan is going to do is perform the operation locally. It's going to take the data, just the change block data, deduplicated data, send it across to the target, wherever that may be, whatever hypervisor that may be in, could be AWS or Azure. It will then apply that change block information, boot the virtual machine up on the target, apply the data. Because I said boot, turn, power on, and it'll make sure that the machine's not in a blue screen status. Otherwise, it'll abort or fail the job and report. And then it'll rinse and repeat that cycle. So if you've got an SLA beyond just being able to recover or restore at time of disaster, we get up on the next notch. The next level up from live sync replication, we pushed the envelope on that one to say I could arguably get most of my VMs going within a 4-hour range, including the conversions. Because if you think about AWS or Azure, we have to do conversion of format, especially if you're coming from VMware, so all the conversions are taken care of. What we recently introduced was Live Sync Direct, which now we're bypassing the local backup altogether, and coming on to every 15-minute RPO. So every 15 minutes, we're quickly taking a VM snapshot, grabbing the change block information, going over, and right now the source and target is VM to VM, but the objective is to now do multiple hypervisors. You can see where we're headed. And then eventually even go to sub-5-minute type RPOs using block level sophistication. So it'll all be handled straight out of that plan. You set up the plan, you set up your SLAs, create local protection and disaster protection all embedded in one, and then you reuse the plan for whatever it may be.
2 questions.
Yep.
First, does this hook into cloud management platforms like VRA or other platforms?
VRA, yes, they can pull the plans. So there's an entire track. Actually, I'm presenting on the VMware roadmap as well. So we've got basic vRealize automation integration today where a VM admin can come in, select a specific plan, and attach that to a VM, and then it will kick it off because of the RESTful interface. A lot of the asks from the customers are some of the other more popular ones to say, can you tie into those platforms, and we'll call your function. So you've set everything up, expose the policy to me, and I'll execute the plan.
Okay. Second would be, how do I do chargeback on this? Does it hook into chargeback software, or do you do that, or?
There are reports here. So under the reports,
And this is part of the function our service providers use. There are chargeback based upon the amount of storage you use, amount of, I think, compute that you use. It will also pull back cloud resource usage.
Cloud resources,
based
yeah.
upon how you've segregated different environments or different clients or different groups of clients. I'll let you go ahead and go first. Sorry.
It actually varies. So I was going to ask you where you're coming in from that question. So I've had requests from customers to say, I want to charge on how much backend capacity they're storing after deduplication. So we'll report that. And Don's right. This interface can actually be rebranded and it is rebranded from managed service providers, where they will only expose portions of it. So everything that you see on the left side is rollback access controlled. Mm-hmm. Depending on who's logging in, they'll limit the amount of menu items and operations that they can see. So what MSPs have done with this tool is said, we're providing you this service. You can do these are the policies that you'll have. If you want anything extra, you'll have to call us, or if you do extra, we'll recognize that and we'll charge you back with it. But they're being charged based on the reports, what they're seeing in terms of backend capacity usage, et cetera. Whatever is most favorable for them.
And all this data is available through a standard set of APIs?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the reporting
I want to build back for you, tied up my media server for X hours.
Yes.
They do that.
So that's an interesting use case, especially in cloud, where they're going by job length. They're saying, so in a month, for example, if I had a customer.
If it's AWS and I'm spinning up an EC2 instance to
Exactly.
be the media server for the backup,
then
yes,
you're billing
I'm gonna
back.
charge
You got it,
that.
and that's the granularity that we're getting to on that one.
But I've also been in the data center where the owner of that system refuses to upgrade it, and it delivers data at 10 megabits per second, and so it takes 4 days to back it up, and it's like, dude, I'm going to make it too expensive for you to keep that old crap.
So from a integration with hypervisors and virtualization platforms, from a depth of information that you guys expose directly from, let's say, a CMDB of Red Hat stacks or Microsoft stack or even VMware stack, do you guys expose VM tagging, et cetera, so I can run a report that says, show me everyone with the tag legacy 10 meg connection,
Yes.
et cetera.
Yeah, tagging's the easy one. We've got a lot of customers using that aspect, so tagging's the easy part. Or they'll do it by sub-client, just because that's another way to kind of categorize it.
And then, of course,
logically.
you went through the VRA example, so I can do like VApp. So I'm backing up this application, this VApp application I can back. That should be low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Does it work with VMware in the cloud, AWS?
Glad you asked. I have an entire session I'm presenting on VMC on AWS. The short answer is yes. We've had to make a couple of changes to code. So we couldn't, for example, where we were getting data directly from the hardware, we had to make those changes. They also don't support NBD or SAN mode on that, so we made those code changes. We embedded the VDDK or our latest version, and depending on where you're running it, people can flip to the other VDDK and perform those operations. So I've got actually presenting an entire 45-minute session where half of it is, in case you didn't attend VMworld, this is all that's going on in the additional use cases on there. So that's one of the ones we did actually showcase at VMworld. We were running on that.
And that's why I invited the smarter guys, right there.
Just the one quick question.
Yep.
I was going to say, when we're talking cross-cloud, cross-platform, I guess we're still talking about I'm moving the machine in its current state converted for the data store of the destination. But that means if I'm going from VMware to Azure, I'm bringing my VMware tools along, and I'm going to have to insert my my Windows guest tools.
We're taking care of that.
They're doing that
You are
for you.
taking care of that.
We're doing a lot of the, so the 3 use cases, and had you gone through the other 300 slides that Don had.
It was only another 30, but we decided not to do that.
My plane came in late, so I might have missed it too.
That's one of the use cases covered. So that's exactly a use case. So the move use case I've shown you, the very quick demo of being able to take and start moving your data. So in the customer's journey to go to cloud, what I'm finding, at least in talking to a lot of customers on a weekly basis, is there is the let's just get data to cloud. So last week I was with one in my backyard. They want to move 13 petabytes of tapes, 13 years worth of tapes to Azure. I'm like, all right, you're going to rob Peter to pay Paul, but that's fine. The next stage becomes, now my data is sitting on cloud. What do I do with it? So a lot of our development and abilities or capabilities that we've released have gone into, now it's sitting in S3, whatever format it may be. We have it in VM format. We have it in maybe it's a SQL dump format. Extract that data and instantiate it. So with the credentials, with AWS, with Azure, and the other cloud platforms to come soon, we can now start orchestrating that. So that's all that they need. We're going to ask a couple of questions on the wizard to say, what would you like this shape to be? This is what we have. In some cases, we're already picking things up. And once they've finished all the wizards, they hit the go button. We're pulling that data in the most efficient manner, straight out of S3, mounting it, collecting it, getting it, converting it, bringing their instance up and bringing it up, so that and making that available. So the fun thing I say, and I have both AWS and Azure accounts that I've monkeyed around with them quite a bit. It's fun doing it for the first couple of virtual machines, but if you're the person tasked with take these 1,000 production machines and move them to cloud, that's when you start really needing tools, and that's where it's starting to really help. So that's the second use case. But I didn't want to ignore and forget about your question in terms of restore capability, so I want to bring you to the restore screen. And one of the things, again, tying to role-based access control we can do with this screen is this can be pushed out to individual tenants. So if I'm a person in a department and I own 10 VMs and I want to be able to just restore my VMs, I can just get access to this. We've got essentially 4 what I'll call live features. The first one is live browse, which means I'm digging down into the file system of the virtual machine. So in this case, I did backup a virtual machine, and as Don had mentioned, we've metadata indexed and grabbed that information. So rather than indexing at the time of backup, we're indexing at time of restore. Probabilities, right? Why waste time on the backups? So right now, it's looking at that VM backup I performed. It's cracking it open. It's looking in the file system, and it's indexing the contents of that. And it's going to display here in a couple of seconds. Display that. So now I have got the file file restore capabilities. So this is live browse. I'm browsing to the individual virtual machine file system. I don't want to restore the entire C. And I can pluck a file and perform that restore operation. The other one would be a mount. And again, in the interest of time, I won't go through every single one. Actions. Sorry. Virtual machine files, which means the files that compose it. So we're going to live mount it straight out of the backup store. We're going to expose the VM files, and you can then pick and choose which VM files. This is an entire disk level operation. Hopefully you never have to do that. And then there's the full virtual machine that's through live recovery. So we'll boot up the virtual machine on our platform, be a hyperscale, and you'll have full access to it. In the meantime, we'll vMotion it.
Hold on there. You won't boot it up, you'll present it.
Present it.
Okay, because there are
Present-
other vendors
presented
who will
power on.
actually run the VM on the appliance.
Yeah, we'll do
Which,
that.
No,
yeah, no, you don't have a hypervisor, you can't run the VM.
We present the NFS
Yeah.
mount.
Yeah,
It-
NFS mount, I'm sorry, yeah.
You're right. It's being run
hypervisor
off of
provides the
ESX.
CPU.
There's a big difference.
There is, yes.
From a storage guy, he's like, yeah, I'm running it there. You know you're not.
Yeah.
NFS presented.
Oh, yeah, like I'm not a
Catalog files removed.
No, I'm talking about him, not you.
Yeah. Okay, so you present it via NFS and.
Correct. And so those are the operations. So you've got the live present, live recovery, where the recovery is happening while it's running off of our store, if you will. Live browse, which is probably the most popular now, because that helps on the backup side. Turn off all the indexing, you've got the information, and we'll build metadata at your favorite time when it's most convenient, whether that's at time of restore. So those are the four, and then live sync falls into that. That's all of the replication stuff. So it's the four live features, if you will, that help us with anything beyond traditional backup.
Okay.
It's the Live Sync Direct that gets them in that 15-minute recovery time where we're also validating the actual, call it block changes that are being replicated. That's what gives the customer the tightest integration. And then if you want to touch on VIO briefly before we pass over to Jonathan
Sure.
here. I know we're on time, right? We've got like 20 minutes left.
So, yeah, well, yeah,
Okay.
it does. So the last step in, you brought it up so I can mention it. The last step in getting to the higher level, higher tier of recoverability is our integration that we're working on. Actually, you're going to see it at the booth here as well, is VIO. So VMware's VIO APIs that allow streaming. Our VSA will essentially be able to talk to vCenter and tell them which VMs we want live streaming. We're capturing the live I/O data straight off of the VMs, storing that locally for a brief period of time, whatever resources would allow, sending it off to the remote side, and then applying them instantaneously on the target virtual machine
Are
as
you
well.
building a full CDP journal out of that?
We are. So we're giving you the option to build a CDP journal, and we're getting 3 recovery options right before I get to your question. Let me answer it. The first one is we will have the raw data sitting there as deep as you want it to have, right? The second one is if you do app consistency with plugins on the source side, that bookmark will get streamed and parked on the secondary side. So you have the flexibility where if a DBA says at time of DR, go to my 15-minute marks because I know I was app consistent. And the third one would be
So the restore
in between
UI
there.
will be annotated.
Correct. The copy will always be running live, so you'll always have the crash consistent lowest RPO. But if you wanted to go to a lower copy, that's sitting in that journal. But it's all built off of, again, commodity hardware with disk sitting, whatever resources you want to throw at it type of thing.
So as the dumb enterprise architect that I am, VIO means VMware Integrated OpenStack to me. What is VIO?
Oh, it's the VMware filter driver plugin.
Okay.
It's the
Filter driver,
it's
okay.
The API
for
hypervisor.
for
Okay.
applying
Filter
filter
driver.
driver.
Okay.
So they're streaming every single item.
And so they support it for caching and for replication. And CDP is just a special case of replication.
So VMware has 2 acronyms for VIO.
VIAO.
It's
VIO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Veo. It looks like Sony Veo.
Okay.
Bye.
It's
not the laptop. The last component was reports, which I kind of
Sorry,
already
sorry.
kind of
Yeah.
plugged on, and let's see.
So in hyperscale, are you doing anything to accelerate the performance of the presented VM? Because the
Are you
typical problem.
bringing it to SSD first?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and the resource question, I mean, coming from a hardware side traditionally, if you consider how most customers have built their scale-up environments, you just did a raw CPU memory count versus what hyperscale did. Way more.
And it will use
No,
way
no,
more.
no,
That's
not where
not
I'm
what he's
going.
saying. Yeah.
90% of the time, if you tell people build your backup repository, they put a relatively small number of very large 7,200 RPM disks in their backup repository because backup is a sequential process and that's all I need. Now, backup isn't a sequential process anymore, but we'll skip that part. But when you end up doing a live recovery from 7,200 RPM disks of an application that normally runs on a solid fire, it run like crap.
Yeah.
And it run like crap till you do the storage vMotion, and while you're doing the storage vMotion, you put more load on those slow disks, So it run even more like
Yeah,
crap.
there are certain competitors in the hyper-converged backup appliance market
the-
that will move their
Great
VMware case
transition
to
to data.
SSD
The
before
specific,
it
the
go-
specific
There's
people
prefetching.
That's
you
where
are
his question's coming
targeting
from.
with this product. Okay,
It will start at the, yep.
yeah, in your mic.
It will start at the SAS, the 7200 RPM level, but it's prefetching those blocks for the operation to know, and that's where the prefetching, that gets loaded into the SSD layer, right? So we don't want to stop the operation as it starts, right? So you want to basically say, yes, I want to mount and I want to get going. So the initial blocks are being pulled directly, but as that really becomes to us, even though it might not be sequential from where the data is written across all of those hard drives, we're pulling all those blocks and prefetching them up into the SSD layer to accelerate that process.
The answer is yes.
I didn't think that would be good enough, so I just wanted to explain a little bit more.
He wouldn't have accepted yes.
Do you want to show just one other?
Well, I just would have followed up with how.
Conversion.
Would have been a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Show the recovery readiness report, and then we'll cut over to Jonathan to do some of the similar recovery capabilities we have for VM. How we can do that for applications, and that's probably what we'll probably close off with.
Okay,
today.
can I get really, really sneaky and say, this is my absolute most critical application and it should always be ready to be instant restored?
Yeah.
On the flash tier.
But if it,
I don't, he's asking if we can pin it. Drop the mic already. He's asking if we can pin it.
oh, you know, there's no pinning yet. Yeah.
We have, like, from the other components, we have that way we'll have it staged in other areas for you, because from our perspective, we don't want you, if it's that critical to you, we don't want you to just start from us. We're typically talking about the replication, and now.
Yeah, you're talking about remote restore.
Right, and then.
I'm just talking about the one
Yes.
dev who's
Yeah.
son-in-law of the VP who keeps blowing up his machine and I need to restore it fast.
LiveSync. Just have it waiting for him.
Yeah,
The last
I
one.
take snapshots, but that's a whole other story.
We'll
Appreciate
get
the
there in a
card.
second for you too.
A question on recovery of data rather than a specific VM or something where I already know where it is. I have some data, I don't know, it's gone. I don't know where it was before. How can I go find it?
Oh, so Shirley, who's on maternity leave, closes the month with the spreadsheet and nobody can
No.
find it?
Something like
I've
that.
taken that
Yeah.
call a couple of times.
So we do have the ability to basically search across a number of different file systems, and it's based, in that case, you're basing it on file level metadata. If you at least know what the file type is, you can search across a massive number of file systems to find where that file itself sits, and we can then pull it back from that point.
Yeah, because we were talking earlier about it being more, it's a data-centric type thing where it's
Right.
more around indexing and understanding what the
Correct.
data is and the value of it, and your ability to do auto-tagging based on understanding data
Right.
structures. So the fact that you have that means I can do that unstructured data search thing.
You gotta index it first, though.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
there
once
are
it's
there are
indexed,
limitations in that based upon how data is containerized, and if you're providing that index and storing it. If you're doing an indexless backup for the performance aspect, and you're just doing
Yeah.
a live browse to pull back.
Yeah.
If it's containerized, you're only as good as the container that you've got the index for. But if you provide that information, that gets additive into the actual super search that we can apply across all the different.
You can index after the job, though.
Correct. You always could.
You don't have to index as the job's going. You can run the index so you can recover. Then you run the indexing after the fact.
So that I can do discovery.
So you can do discovery later.
But
search and
that's
discovery.
usually a different
Restorability is
type
the way.
of
Yeah.
a different type of index at that point. You're not talking meta only. You're usually going content.
Content
at that
indexing,
point.
right. We do
Yeah.
content indexing.
Correct.
Yep.
Open the package.
Which could be useful and important. It's like, oh, I
Absolutely.
can't remember exactly what it is, but it has this content in it, which I know because it was the data I was working on.
Yeah,
I just don't know what it
But
lives
generally,
in.
when
because
you're
I'm
backing up the
non-technical.
NetApp,
Data indexing.
you don't want to do an
You
index
can.
like
Yep.
indexless backup.
No.
When you
It's a
back
much-
up the SQL Server or the Oracle, you want to do an indexless backup because there's only 4 things on there anyway.
Well, his use case is.
Yeah, it's most,
Right.
again, that's focusing on the restore capability, not the backup part of things. It's like, I restore data, I restore information that I need, not that VM. I don't care
Right,
what the
right.
container is, particularly if I move away from specific VMs and the data lives somewhere over there in this application. I need to get the data back. I don't care whether it's containers or VMs
You
or
said-
whatever.
You said the magic word,
What?
container.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've actually thought this far. So now I've got persistent containers with data in them. How do I back up those suckers?
So we can support Docker today. that if it's a consistent Docker container, we can protect that complete container.
Okay.
We don't
so
see
you-
many customers doing that yet, but we are already working down that path.
So you
Because
can,
it mostly doesn't work. But
well,
True.
Another problem.
details.
That's not,
Just-
not what Docker's for.
Justin, it's the future, nothing works.
Oh, yes. Yet.
Okay, so you can essentially mount a Docker volume and back it up.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's
all we need
cool,
right
except that Docker's dying and being replaced with Kubernetes. 'cause-
And
That's next shift.
yes.
That's the orchestration. That's not the.